Cameron,
Yes, sir.
thanks for coming out, brother.
Thank you for having me.
We got a lot to talk about, I think, in this podcast. It's because you've been around the world. You've done a lot of things. I'm really curious to hear about your new TV show that you guys got coming out. So I definitely want to talk about that. I'm a little jealous not being able to be out there with you. So if there's a second season, keep me in mind.
Sure. If we're looking for a fourth, I know whose name I'm putting in the hat. Yeah.
And I think just your journey, man, and what you're doing now. You're doing some really cool stuff out in LA for vets, and also I thought we could talk a little bit about current events and what's going on, and civil war in America. We can dive into that.
Yeah. No, there's a lot going on. I'm ready. Whatever you want to know.
Yeah. So tell me about the show. How did that all start with Netflix? And because it sounds cool.
It not only does it sound cool, but it is cool. It was an amazing opportunity. Honestly, I feel like the luckiest guy on earth. And sometimes I get like imposter syndrome because, compared to the other hosts and compared to the units and the guys I'm meeting, like my military experience pales in comparison. And it's so assuring to be there and like performing right alongside them and knowing that you could do something that's the best feeling on earth. But it's a little intimidating.
Even next to a Navy SEAL?
Okay, Ryan definitely makes me feel good. But shout out to Ryan.
Gonna bust Ryan's balls.
Yeah. But so the show, Toughest Forces on Earth, pretty much it takes myself, former SEAL Ryan Bates, and former UK SBS Dean Stott, and we basically have traveled around the world, embedded alongside 8 special forces units and police units, and each of them have their own specialties. Each of them operate in their own environments based on location, and they're the masters of each environment. So we go for anywhere from 5 to 10 days, and we train alongside them, like their mission set. What places this unit above all others in this specific environment? And coming from Ranger Regiment, I was at 2nd Ranger Battalion for 4 years, and then transitioned to the National Guard. And was a recon team leader over there. So taking those skills, which are pretty hard skills, and trying to transfer over to a mission set I've never done before. It's kind of like drinking from the fire hose. I'm not a big fan of water, and I don't like water. I'm not afraid to admit it, man. I hate the water. Not knowing what's underneath me.
Rangers lead the way. Not all the time.
Most of the time. But I don't like the water. So when I was in the Philippines, trying to pass through the surf in the Zodiacs, that was like one of the, it was a pretty scary experience for me.
It's a great equalizer.
The water is the ultimate equalizer. Like you could be the baddest man on the planet, but if you're, not comfortable being on the cusp of death at all times, then the water is a bit of an issue. But it was an amazing experience. So I got to get dive qualified, working with the Navy EOD here in the States, disarming, bottom mines, seeing what that's all about, that mission.
Oh, so you guys did U.S. units too, not just foreign.
Absolutely. So we did a total of 8 units.
That's
so
cool.
we did, here in the States, we did Navy EOD, and those guys are awesome. Extreme professionals, very proficient. That's a job where one of the biggest things I took out of that one was, here is a job that you can do every single thing right and still lose.
And still die.
Yeah. Like the EOD guys, they have to have a screw loose because that job.
Yeah. Oh, I think they all do.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, if you ever hang out with Marine EOD, there's definitely a screw loose there.
Yeah.
In a good way.
In a great way.
You need them in your back pocket, but
Exactly.
you probably wouldn't bring them to your kid's baseball game and barbecue.
Yeah, no. Yeah, they're like the weird uncle that shows up with a hooker and drunk to a
chain
family
smoking
gathering
the whole time. So tell me, definitely we need to keep Marine recon and check for the next season if you guys do that, because we suck at advertising and marketing. And that's why we're hurting really bad with recruiting and retention. Anyways, so tell me about when you would go into a unit, whether, overseas or whatnot, was it into the schoolhouse basic training level, or did you jump right into an operational team and go out and actually do real things?
Yeah, sure.
Because some people come into our schoolhouses.
And they do. They kind of see that from the schoolhouse side.
Okay.
So we only did that with one unit, and that was Navy EOD. But it was also our first episode, so we kind of filmed things out of order. We didn't really know what show we were making with Navy EOD. That was one of I thought military was the hardest thing I've ever done. Filming.
Filming's hard.
Oh, filming's so hard. We were doing 18-hour days, The guys were right alongside us. Like the transition from military to like crew and filming, whether it's producer, camera operator, like sound guy, it was almost seamless for me. The same type of sense of humor, really dark. You're working long hours. But yeah, no, we embedded into EOD and did the schoolhouse. So we were at the underwater portion, which I thought was a gentleman's course, but it is far from it. I felt so bad for those guys because and it was weird going from like, you know, like myself, Dean, Ryan, we've been there, done that, right? We've done our respective selections. We've, you know, performed at high levels at our units. So to go back and like be the bottom again, that was kind of a reality check. And I mean, I enjoyed it because I'm pretty fresh out, but I think Ryan and Dean they had a bone to pick with the instructors.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. They were pissed when the first day we did like the PT test at underwater with them. And we had to do like the 800-meter swim with the push-ups and sit-ups and the pull-ups and the 1.5-mile run. And like right when we got done, they started smoking the crap out of us because like we were the last to finish because we've been out, you know, we're not held to that standard anymore unless you held it to yourself. And like, you know, I think I ran like Ryan's still fast. I ran like a 9:30 1.5 and they're like, that's not good enough because those dudes were flying and started smoking the crap out of us. And like, that was fun. But after that episode, we realized that's not the show we're making because there's already been a Surviving the Cut. There's already been all these, you know, history channels. They've done.
That's what I was going to say. It kind of sounds like Surviving the Cut. There
yeah. Like there was 8 Weeks in Hell, the documentary about RASP that came out. Like they've already showed that. Everybody knows that to be in special operations, you got to be tough.
Yeah.
That's like
there is an attrition aspect at a certain point in that line.
Yeah,
but that journey.
Everybody's seen that. But what nobody really sees is what happens once you get selected. Like what happens once you get to the unit? How do you incorporate yourself? What skills do you learn? What kind of mission sets are you training? Like what's their training calendar really like? So that's what the show became. So after EOD, you know, we went to Colombia and did the Colombian Junglas, which is like their kind of like DEA specialized SWAT task force in the jungle. They're masters of jungle warfare and they're tough, super tough guys. We jumped in right alongside of them, started doing jungle ops. No training, no PT, just got our issue,
just went to work,
equipment, and just went to work. It's like, because, you know, we have all these prior skills, right? Coming from Ranger Regiment, I pride myself on my skills in patrolling. That is something that we drilled every single day. So I'm familiar, but my exposure is, you know, not as much in the jungle. So there was a lot of firsts for me on this show. Which I really appreciated because not only did I get exposure to a different culture, you get exposure to a different unit that speaks a different language, that has different SOPs, different uniforms, different senses of humor. By the end,
you guys put the uniforms on and everything, and kind of go into what they're wearing.
Yeah, it really depended. It was really depended on, you know. I mean, sometimes I break out my thorax and, you know, But a lot of the times we're wearing their uniforms, getting a taste of what it is. But then sometimes we'd bring our flair and show them like some cool things because that was like we went to Sweden and did Arctic Sear in the Arctic Circle. It was cold. That's how. Yeah, it was bad. I actually ended up getting one of the worst sicknesses I've ever gotten in my life. Yeah, I have no idea. I got COVID like twice during the pandemic and everything, and like this made COVID look like, you know, an allergy, like allergies. It was, I don't know what was going on with me, and it started on the first day, and we were there for 2 weeks. And Dean went to do some marksmanship with some of the other cadre, and like Ryan and I, since we've never been on skis before, especially in Sweden, which they still ski on wooden skis with like metal coils, like something you would see hanging in a ski lodge type of ski.
It's interesting.
Super interesting. And those were the skis that they use to this day. And it's that mindset. It's like, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Because they were working, like they were putting tar on the bottom of their skis and starting a campfire and then heating them up for the grip instead of putting the sleeves on the bottom. So I was like,
old school.
Yeah, super old school. So Ryan and I had no idea what we were doing. So they like kind of gave us a crash course because we were going to be skiing the entire time. So we were skiing all day with the Parachute Ranger Squadron, and they sent guys to go through the SEER course with us. And those dudes are just tough as nails. You know, I'm very confident that just the Swedish people are some of the toughest people I've ever met. The cold does not bother them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the first day I thought I had food poisoning because they gave me this like big old Swedish meatball looking thing from a DFAC, and like I crushed it. And like I thought it was the biggest mistake ever because I was like skiing as fast as I could to the toilet in the middle of the blizzard, you know? And yeah, I was like dry heaving, and we still had to continue training. So the next day we started doing survival stuff. So like, you know, fire making 101 and like how to prevent frostbite and all these things. And like I was just starting to feel like shit. And then we had to do the ice hole, and it was averaging around like
ski into it.
And,
Okay.
It was probably
typical.
Yeah. So they went out to the frozen lake, and they cut a big old square in it, and it was like -20 Celsius outside, and they had to like have some guy stirring the water to keep it from freezing over again. And yeah, we'd get in the skis with our rucks and our poles in one hand and just dive in and learn how to like get out.
Self-rescue.
Yeah. Self-rescue. And then it wasn't over there. And then we had to learn how to self-warm. It wasn't like, okay, you did it, get in the heating tent, this is Hollywood. It was like, yeah, there was no tents out there. So
what was some of the techniques they used for self-warming?
Self-warming was like immediately getting the dry clothes, and then just running a figure eight until everything was okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so in the snow was
no
just
breathing exercises or any of that stuff?
No, I mean, I've never done anything like that. But leading up to it, it was just like, I didn't even cold plunge.
We need, I mean, well, as Americans, we probably need breathing
exercises. Yeah.
But they're like, what?
Oh, and it was the most shocking thing ever. Yeah, no, because I like went in, and you know, I grew up in Southern California. The second it drops under 50 degrees, people lose their freaking minds, you know. So that's the coldest I've ever been, and like just having that feeling of your blood just getting back into your hands, it's like someone stabbing you with daggers. So that I was hurting, and I look over, and like the Swedish guys are like playing in the water and like having a good time. And to get out, we had to ask the SEER instructor like permission to exit like as we're hanging on with our poles, we're like permission, and we're treading water the entire time. It wasn't like we could touch the bottom. So you had to ask him, you're like, permission to exit the ice, please. And we had to be able to verbally say it instead of freaking out. And one guy, I remember.
Yeah, they're trying to get you to calm down.
Yeah. So you're not freaking out. Yeah, control your breathing. And I remember just looking over, and I'm, shivering my ass off, can't even put my socks. I feel like I have cerebral palsy because I can't even work my hands. And I look over, and one of the guys is like in the water, just super chill. And he's like, permission to stay in the water. And I'm like, hey, screw that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, after Sweden, that was a tough one, just because after that ice hole, I just dropped dead sick, and they had to pull me out of the course. Because I was just like, it was one of those things that I had to like put my ego to the side, because like nobody wants to be that guy. Nobody wants to have to sit out, especially when there's awesome training going on. Because they had to do a 3-day 2-night escape and evasion, and they sleep out there. They had to build their own structures and use them. And I really wanted to do that, because that's a once in a lifetime experience to be able to do that in the Arctic. Yeah. And like, it was just not happening though. Like, I could barely move my entire body. I woke up one morning with pink eye in both my eyes. And then, I had like 103.
It's a spicy meatball.
Oh yeah. I had like 103-degree fever. And like, so they were just like, nah. And then I remember we finished filming there, and then Ryan went home, and he got what I got. And he like called me like 3 weeks later, and he's like, I don't understand. He's like, my wife had to put me in an ice bath because I was overheating, and like, he's like, that was one of the worst things I've ever had. I don't understand how you had that. And I was like, yeah, me neither, man. It sucked.
What was the most memorable trip, I guess, or what was the best one? What best country, best unit stands out to you?
Yeah. My personal favorite was Malaysia, just because those dudes are crazy as hell. I think it was the most shocking thing. That was the biggest culture shock in military, just of kind of military tactics and training I've seen. I mean, granted, all the countries, like going to Austria and working with their tier 1 and seeing the Austrian Alps and doing combat climbing there, that was just beautiful and terrifying at the same time.
I got a chance to do that.
Yeah. And, but in Malaysia, that we did this swamp warfare there, which was like half swamp in the mangroves, half jungle warfare, half like CT counterterrorism training. And the thing was, like, they did everything live. Like, they didn't use blanks. They don't do sim. They're like, if we use our weapons, we use our weapons. That was the only country that we did everything, like straight up act of valor status, like did everything with the cameras, like having to position the camera, shooting law rockets, not wearing ear pro at all times because they're like, you don't have time to put the softies in. It's like, we can't afford belt doors. It was gnarly. Yeah. And so we're shooting live ammo the entire time. So that's just always fun.
How was that from a safety standpoint? How'd you feel with a bunch of dudes running around live fire that,
that you've never worked with and you've never, it's scary. It's definitely scary. So, but
it's real. How many times we work with partner forces in country,
sure.
And so we're used to it, but from a training standpoint, you typically don't have that mindset turned on.
Not to mention we have, camera operators, we have producers running out there. Yeah. So not only were we hosts on the show,
and they're not used to that, blocking cameras and stuff. So that's another safety issue.
Yeah. So not only with the safety of the operators in mind, the safety of the, the hosts, but we also had to consider the safety of the camera operators, everybody else around us. So it was difficult. It wasn't like, we're going to do this entire break the contact and just get where you don't get shot. No, it was like step by step.
Okay.
So it was really controlled, but it was very fast paced. So the second we could call a ceasefire and be like, hey, position that camera over here because this is more advantageous to get a good shot. And so you don't get, back blast to the face from this law rocket. Let's do that. But it was still super cool. They also did, some of the gnarliest SEER training I've ever seen. They showed us kind of their selection process. So this was one episode that we got a little bit of exposure to see what it takes to be there. And they were doing a long march. It was like 100K movement over 3 days, like no food, no water, like just walking forever.
It's a pretty good group.
Yeah, pretty good group. And then immediately after that, they go into a 10-day swamp survival. And when I say swamp survival, they give them you're almost completely naked. You're in like PT shorts. I had like Ranger panties on and your boots. And then they gave them your rifle, your Alice webbing, a machete, and a coconut to eat out of. And they say, survive for 10 days in the mangroves. And they teach them how to, make shelters above the ground because the water will come in, and they, teach them how to forage for food and basically to just survive off nothing. And they're covered head to toe in mud because it keeps the insects from biting them, and it also provides natural camouflage. And we get out there, and I've never seen anything like this. And they're like, okay, yeah, you guys are gonna stay here for a little bit, start mudding up.
You didn't have to do the whole 10 days though.
Oh no. We were there maybe like for a day, and the crazy part that like kind of was behind the scenes.
You got crabs, you got fruits, you got
crabs,
lots of stuff
snails.
Eat, right?
We ate a python, like a 14-foot python, and a lizard.
Gained weight out there.
Yeah, but those dudes, I felt so bad for them. Well, the crazy part was you think it would be pretty relaxed. Like, the more you move, the more energy you're expending, meaning the more you have to eat. So a lot of them are just kind of chilling out. But the craziest thing is if they don't, there's still consequences out there because they're going through selection. So their consequence isn't really physical. It's almost torturous because they have this bamboo cage that was underneath. It was probably about this high off the ground, and if you didn't collect enough food or you weren't pulling your weight in the camp, they would put you in the cage for like 6. I think they told us 6 hours, and they're like they would put multiple people in here. And I'm like, how many guys have you fit? Like Ryan, Dean, and I, we went in the cage just to get a little bit of see what it was like in there, and 3 Americans could barely fit. And we're like, how many people have been in here? And they're like, they can fit up to like 12. They're like, we can fit 12, and the water comes up, so you're sitting there, like just breathing, and that was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And then on top of that, then they take us over to the CT range, and they're like, we're going to do a stress shoot, but we want to demonstrate one of our capabilities or one of our training exercises called confidence shooting, because we want to be confident that you're competent with your weapon system and you're confident engaging targets within close proximity to your friendlies.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, so they would stand like 7 meters from each other with suppressed MP5s facing each other. One guy would, stand over to the left for a 90-degree turn. One guy would hold about a balloon-shaped paddle, and he'd put it by his head, like holding it right here.
You'd shoot the balloon
paddle?
paddle?
And they'd, 2 rounds right past his face, and then he'd go the other way. He'd put the paddle right side of the face, tick-tick. He'd put it between his legs, shoot between his legs. Then they'd take a knee, put it on top of his head, and they'd just be doing this back and forth for until the mag was empty. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
That's awesome. We should do that more.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, would you like to try? And I was like, absolutely, man. I was like, nah, I'm good. Nah, I'm totally good.
You should have done. So yeah, stand down range, hold up that plate, man.
Yeah, like, you guys got any shotguns I can use?
I mean, a lot of people cringe at that stuff.
Yeah,
but there have been and are programs that do that, and it's not something we would ever show outside because you know what happens. Like, it's a bunch of Russians shooting each other with bulletproof vests and stuff on. It's like, no, there has to be a confidence level there from a team standpoint. So I remember a couple times doing Alpha Bravo shoots where, you know, Alpha's online and Bravo's sitting down between targets. So it's not like right next to your face.
Exactly.
There's safety factor, but it's like, hey, man, you're standing down a hallway and somebody comes out and takes a shot and I've got room. Would I actually take that shot in reality? You know, 99.9% of people, if you showed them the scenario, they'd be like, yeah, I would absolutely take that shot. Because if I didn't, then my buddy's getting killed.
Die.
Okay, then we're going to show you what processes we can do to achieve that goal more safely.
Yeah.
But yeah, then you see guys like that in Malaysia or Russians or anybody else, you're like, okay, that's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. And like, you know, working with Dean, you know, from his SBS background, like they do stuff like that all the time. And
That's where it all started. Like,
and I can confidently say in Ranger Regiment, we do nothing like that. And we're still, you know, pretty proficient with our weapon systems. Because you have that 1 meter barrel buffer off when you're in CQB, and we train that to a T. And I mean, so I was confident, but like, I am not in the military anymore. So, you know, if I get shot, it's who's going to feed my cats, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
Cats.
Yeah. But so Malaysia was probably one of the craziest places that I worked with on the show. That's the one. But all the units were amazing. Like the locations we went, like probably the most beautiful place was Jordan, working with the Jordanian Special Forces. I got to meet the King of Jordan when I was there, King Abdullah II. Yeah, he was really cool. That's a funny story too, because I totally missed his grand entrance because the secret security guy told me I had enough time to piss. So it was, that was fun.
I think you told me about this a while ago.
Yeah, it was, they were like, because the king, they're very proud of their king because he's one of the few world leaders that, you know, before he took the throne, King Abdullah II was the commander of their special forces group. Right. So yeah, he comes from a special forces background. So anytime there's and Jordan's huge for, you know, cinema productions. Indiana Jones was filmed out there. The Martian, Wadi Rum is the desert. And it's just like, you literally feel like you're on another planet. And that's where we did like desert warfare training.
Okay. Did you go to their big range facility? I forget what it's called.
Yeah, Castek.
Castek, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. King Abdullah Special Operations Training Center.
That's cool. I want to go there.
Oh yeah, you should. We did a Boeing takedown for like a kind of a hostage rescue type of scenario. And like we hit it from they incorporated little birds landing on the wing, like ground forces coming up. I had to climb through the nose, the little cargo port that's like this big with a pistol. Yeah, it was really, you know, like I said, opportunities that I don't think I would have been afforded if I stayed in, you know, Ranger Regiment, because we have, every unit has their niche, you know, they have they're not going to branch out and like, you know, do these super niche courses when something is their bread and butter. That's why we have so many different specialties, different special mission units. But to be able to get afforded the opportunity to get exposure to all these different trainings is like, for me, this is, you know, tactics, combat, shooting, fitness. This is all things I consider myself very passionate about. So to be able to do that, that's like, man, I would do this job for free. The money's nice, but you know, if you allowed me to do this for a long time, I absolutely would. Yeah.
That's awesome. What is, I guess, the biggest difference or the delta between, you know, our experience in the U.S. military and then working with all those foreign people in the last year doing that in one big lump? Like what's anything stands out to you that's different? You know, because I think fundamentally, even if their weapons programs are going to be different, you're still shooting a gun, right? Yeah. You're still doing CQB. You're still raiding a boat, raiding a ship, going through the jungle, doing things. But is it culturally? Is it like, what's the biggest difference that you got out of that?
You know what's crazy is, you know, my mindset going into it every time I'd go to a different unit, and I'm like, I would say I didn't know what to expect. But by the end of the 8th episode, which for me was Mexico, they're all the same. Like I think there's two different cultures. So you have the actual culture of the country itself, like their traditions, their courtesies, you know, the different types of food they eat, the cars they drive, the clothes they wear. That's one culture. But the warrior culture remains the same all over the world. We speak the same language when it comes to military. Like every single guy that I met, you know, especially in the special, because these were all specialized units, you know, they're all under their special operations umbrella. Every single guy I felt like I've known, I felt like I've worked with, we might have spoke a different language, but like when we were in a stack, it was like these dudes are the same. They think alike, they're all lions. So that was the craziest thing. Yeah. It's like their SOPs might be a little different. The way they like, the way they'll do something is like, compared to the US, just because, different equipment, different training levels, different places they learned all these things, different necessities. That would be a little bit different. But as far as the individual, that was the same. And that was
like they all have that same sense of duty.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There was never one individual I talked to, because we had the opportunity to pull them to the side to kind of like see what ticks. It wasn't just all training. It was like when we got there, the units actually would kind of treat us like black sheeps, like the host. Even though we'd sleep with them, even though we'd stay with them most of the time, they thought we were actors, because they're like, "Oh, Netflix is filming a TV show out here."
Oh, most of the operational guys.
Yeah. We'd show up and they'd think we were Hollywood actors. Like they didn't know we came from military backgrounds. I mean, it didn't help that my nose is pierced, and yeah, that was always the talk of the town. I'm like, hey man, I'm out of the military. My fiance likes it, so that's all that matters.
You should have kept going. We're just actors, man. We've never done this in our lives.
Yeah, and just fast rope. Like, how do you work this thing? Around the room. But it was funny because like the first 2-3 days was always a warm up period, because they're kind of feeling us out. Most of them would think we're actors, and then once they see us get behind the gun or start running around, then you'd see them start opening them up. But yeah, I mean, some of the conversations were forced for the cameras. Like we're like, okay, we have these guys over here. They have some cool stories. I want you guys to sit down and talk with them and kind of see what makes them tick. But by the end of it, it was all organic. It was me going up to a guy, pushing him from behind and being like, "What's up, buddy?" And him, laughing, and then having a beer at the end, after all the training is done, we'd sit there and we'd get absolutely smashed and tell stories.
That's cool.
So yeah, that in that aspect, it was like the same wherever you went. It was just a matter of accents and language.
Are you guys talking about a second season already, or is that get determined through ratings and stuff?
That's going to be up to the masses. So if you're watching this, finish all 8 episodes so you can get a season 2. Right. But so we should know within the first month, after, because that's when they're going to get all their analytics in and see how it performs. But from Netflix, they were super excited about this. We haven't had a true good military show in a long time, and I'm not saying like good, but like one that really explores military culture.
So tell me how was Syria in 2017? Because I never worked in that part. So
yeah, no, it was different. It was really different. Obviously, coming from Ranger Regiment, like Afghanistan and Iraq were like the go-tos. So when Syria started popping up, it was like we'd send one platoon there, one company at a time, and it was just like kind of like a redheaded stepchild. But when I was afforded the opportunity to go there in 2017, this was like right when the fight for Raqqa, like the city,
2017,
Al Raqqa was like the hub, and like we were really fighting for it. So when I showed up, we relieved 175, and they were in the tick, and it was starting to get towards the end of fighting season, but they were like, ISIS was still going hard. I remember we lived in this encampment, and it was like an abandoned schoolhouse, and you heard the part that I knew that I was like, damn, I'm in it right now, was you heard about the stories of like ISIS burning books and like basically taking these schools and like preventing them from having any outside knowledge of like the rest of the world. And like when we moved into the schoolhouse, we had like a gym in the bottom. We had 2 gyms. I'll talk about the other gym in a sec, but we had one gym that when you walked in, you could see where they would burn all the books. Like the black char from the flame would go all the way up in the corner onto the roof. And you're like,
gymnasium?
No, just an empty room. We turned it into a gym.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. So, but like you would see in the corner, like it'd be all white walls and like tile floors, but then you'd go in the corner and you'd see the entire corner was just lit on flames. And you were like, damn, this is real. Not to mention when you'd go to the rooftop, because it was about 3 stories, you could see a soccer stadium with maybe a 60-foot, like those giant flags that you typically see in cities of like U.S. flags. You could see one of an ISIS flag. That was like their HQ. You could literally see the enemy HQ. It was like, it's right there.
Really?
So that was like a crazy time. But yeah, it wasn't your typical, at least what I imagined for my first combat deployment. I thought we were going to be like running and gunning, like kicking in doors like they do at BAF, that was what I was hoping for. But when I got there, it was like, we were just pumping 120s like every day, all day. we shared the MFP, which is the mortar firing point. We shared it with the SAS, and we shared it with the SF guys. So we'd be on like a rotation. So it'd be like the Rangers were in charge of it, then SAS would be in charge of it, but then we'd rotate. But you can go down there anytime because we were shooting like all day, every day. And if you just wanted, like, that was one of the things that we do for fun. It's like we're working out, we're watching movies, or we're hanging rounds.
I was just shooting 120s all day long.
Yeah,
right.
I would, if I could remember, I'd tell you. Yeah, no, it's a big. I mean, for those of you that don't know, the 120 is the largest mortar system you can shoot. It like you need a shovel after you're done doing a fire mission because you have to dig the thing out from the force of it hitting the ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the average was like 200 to 300 rounds of 120s a day. Like we got in trouble because we ran out of rounds and we started shooting Yugoslavian rounds and. Yeah, like we had like a ND one day, or it wasn't an ND, but it was just like it didn't go off. So like we had to call in EOD and they had to like blow a 120 round like right outside of our compound. And like that thing shook I couldn't imagine being on the receiving end of that. Because like just one round of that like shook our entire building. I think it's like a 50 meter, just like absolutely devastate kind of area of effect. But yeah, we were shooting so many of it. Like, I don't understand how our gunner who was like in charge of it, he's probably fucking dead right now from like a TBI. Like, he probably had like a brain aneurysm. Just cause like we all are rated for TBI, like after that trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was
between Carl G's and everything else.
It was crazy. But it was either doing that or it was working in the CCP, which is a casualty collection point. Like we had right when we first got there, we had a sauce team from the Air Force, like with some Army medicine side. I forgot what they were called. Oh, they were the FST guys, the Forward Surgical Team. So they were working under one building, and all of this stuff was in our compound, and we were getting like 6 to 8 casualties a day from the SDF because, as you know, they were clearing Raqqa. Because when we got there, it was not contained. It was like they were fighting for their lives out there. So they were clearing through. Like obviously, they were getting blown up, shot, everything, any type of battlefield trauma, like we saw in the CCP every single day. So our primary responsibility at first was like CCP security. So basically like when the casualties would come in, wand them down, make sure they don't have anything, make sure nobody's in with a weapon. And then we just got so swamped that they're like, hey, guy on shift, you got hands right now? We need your help. Come help me pack this guy. So like we started hanging out at the CCP because we were getting actual live tissue experience, like working in the OR, like having to scrub in and everything. But there was no real traditional scrubbing in because my fiance's in medicine now. She's in med school and like doing her surgical rotations, and she's telling me how she scrubs in. And I was like, you know how we scrubbed in Syria? We spit on our hands and we just put them inside the guy. But yeah, I got like over 600 hours or close to it of OR time with no, the highest level of training was like Ranger First Responder. So that was like a very exciting time. The second gym, I guess, was.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what's the second gym? Something had to be with that.
Yeah, so we called it Dead Guy Gym because it was located in the CCP. We had it was kind of a mashup of units within this tiny little schoolhouse, and like to put it in perspective, you had to run like we weren't allowed outside for security reasons, obviously, and if we went outside, it was like in fire team minimum, all kitted out. So basically, to get like a mile, you had to run like run the wall like 17 times to get like one. Like it was tiny, and it was like Delta Force on the bottom, British SAS, French Special Reconnaissance, like their SAS guys, and then it was an SF group. I forgot what group it was, and then it was us on top. So like it was just a mashup of like international, like pretty much just a joint special operations community, yeah. So we had one gym in the main building and then a gym in the CCP, and that's where we kept one of our squads. And when you would go in there, just because obviously there's a lot of guys in this place, the gyms would get busy super fast, and the CCP was never really busy for this reason, because when someone would die on the table in the CCP, they would take the body and just put it on a litter and leave it in the gym until they'd come and pick it up. So you'd be in there casually, like benching or working out next to just some corpse on the ground.
Doing deadlifts.
Well, I was going to get
Sorry.
yeah, you beat me to the punch, man.
God damn.
Yeah,
wow.
No, so yeah, it got to a point like you get really unemotional towards things. Like I remember in the beginning, like when I first saw it, I was like,
desensitize you, man.
Oh, absolutely. I was like, this is crazy. And then after like the second day, I was like, this is crazy. And the third day, I was like, yeah.
This is now the new normal.
This is the normal. Yeah, this is the new normal. Yeah. So like we would go in there and just like as a practical joke, we'd like do deadlifts next to the dead body because it's in the name. It got to a point where like, they would be working on somebody and, they'd amputate them because if you ever seen a hand that got blown up, man, it's like, looks like ground beef and it smells like it too. So like, they'd be chopping off fingers that they need to like seal up and everything. And we just take the fingers off the ground and like you'd see your buddy kind of across the room and just fucking throw the finger at him and drill him. And yeah, it got dark. It got super dark. Yeah. But I mean, that was like normal. That was normal in Syria. So that's when I say like, it wasn't a traditional deployment. It was like I don't know. My entire military experience up until this day has been like things I never expected. I didn't get what I envisioned myself doing, which was like the Call of Duty, like kicking indoors and being a hard charger. I mean, I was a hard charger, but just doing the most obscure things.
It's never like the poster.
No, it's never like the poster.
The commercial. I guess from a vulnerability standpoint, not weakness, just two different definitions there. How does that feel now? Thinking back on those stories or seeing that stuff, how do you do with that?
Ooh, it took years of counseling and therapy to get where I am now. Because a
lot of people watch us go, you're throwing fucking fingers at people. Like, yes,
and I was upset.
That's why war is hell.
Yeah,
it's a horrible, horrible thing that we don't wish on anybody, and that's why it takes a lot of unwinding, I guess you could call it, to once you get back.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like, and the crazy part, at least now that I look back onto it, it was like, it's crazy now. When I got out of the military, I remember I was with my fiance and, she's been a big support system for me, because like she's normal, and, when I remember we were sitting at dinner one night, like when we first started dating, and she's like, what do you regret about the military? And I was like, I regret that I didn't get to kill enough people. And she like looked at me and like, if you told that to your military buddy, it'd be like, yeah, man. Like,
yeah, you're kind of slacking over there, bro.
Yeah, you're kind of slacking, big dog. I got to get those numbers up. Those rookie numbers. And she looked at me and she's like, do you hear yourself?
Yeah.
And I was like, that like took me back. And I'm like, I am upset because I did not get to kill enough people.
That's a super sense of justice talking, though.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you feel like I should have done more. You're always going to think that. You're going to think that about being in a show. You're going to think that about training classes. You're going to think that about, that's what that sense of justice does. It's that thing that I'll go back and parrot, again, Tyler Gray, that like his movie, That Which We Love Destroys Us.
Yeah.
And so we love that love story of going and fighting evil and tyranny so much. We should have done more. I should have taken more lives.
Yeah.
But when you say that to somebody else, that's like, I'll use your normal. It doesn't really come off to them like that.
Yeah.
And it kind of slaps you in the face for a second.
It does. That's when I first like realized, I was like, hey, I got some work I got to put in. Cause like this whole civilian thing, like it's not going to work unless I put in the work here. Otherwise I'm always going to feel like a black sheep. I'm not going to feel like I'm, in the right place. But yeah, that I took a lot of therapy, a lot of like being okay with what I did. Cause instead of focusing on what I didn't do, it's like, I need to focus on what I did. Cause, comparatively speaking, when I talk to other vets, like I did do stuff. Like when it comes to the mission, like what was the mission when we went? Was the mission to kill as many people as we can? No. The mission was. Yeah, never. Exactly. The mission was to make sure everybody gets home. And I did. Like every job that I did from a leadership position, because I was a machine gun team leader, like I had subordinates underneath me. Everybody got home safe, and to me that's a win. So now like I said, it took years to switch that type of thinking, and it was really selfish thinking. It was like, okay, it was like I.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, but it was never like we. And it was like as a cohesive unit, like, I'm sure there's people's lives, like we saved a bunch of people in the CCP. Like I never even considered that. And it's like those people, our life because of what we did there. And then, and it was just a really cool experience, and just being grateful for that, like exposure, is cool. So yeah, I'm over the moon about that now, but it took a long time to get there.
Yeah, that's good, man. All right, last question on Syria. What's
Sure.
the most sketch thing you did while you were there?
Of course. There was, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, I had to drive across the country with like 2 other guys in an up-armored Land Rover. It was Land Cruiser, Toyota, yeah, Land Cruiser. And it was just super sketchy because, like, we had one...
By yourselves?
Yeah, by ourselves. That's it.
Across the country?
Across the country. On the other side.
Sounds like a horrible idea.
Yeah. I don't know why. I didn't know. It's just something to do. You know, and we weren't uniformed. Like, I had a big old beard at the time.
It was a beer run, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a beer run. The greatest beer run ever. Yeah, suck it, Zac Efron. That was it. But no, we had this new piece of technology, and, like, it was really cool. But only one guy apparently in country knew how to use it. Like, they just dropped it off, I guess, and everyone's like, "Oh, what is this thing?" Like, kicking it and like tapping it with sticks. But yeah, there was one guy from 1st Ranger Battalion. He was an RTO, and he's like, yeah, he's like the only qualified man to use this. So they're like, we need that guy here now. So you guys got to go get him. We can't dedicate air assets to this right now because the airspace in Syria was always occupied. So like they were dropping hellfires. Like, if there was silence, that was noticeable.
So the Russians flying in the airspace.
Yeah. Oh, it was everybody.
Side. That's a weird deal.
Yeah, it was super weird deal. So they're like, we're not dedicating airspace to, to get this guy. So we're gonna have to drive there. So they're like, my squad leader came up to me and my buddy Micah, and then he's like, you guys are gonna go. You're gonna take our RTO here because we need to keep in contact with you. And you're gonna take this Land Cruiser and you're just gonna follow these SDF guys and hope they take you to the right spot. And it was like, so we loaded up. We're in civilian clothes. I remember it was like, this is the first time I got to wear Converse, like in cries, and I felt super cool. So we just start driving. And like in Syria, maybe every like 2 miles or like probably like 2 or 3 clicks, you always hit a checkpoint. It's always like blocking the road and going through this little SDF checkpoint. But we had our escort with us. And it's not, it's sketchy enough having to drive through this country that is at war with like 5 different things, like 5 different wars happening within it. Like you didn't know. It was kind of like a civil war. Like at all times I was like, what the fuck is happening here? Because I never knew. It was just such a multi-dimensional amount of chaos. Every
intelligence agency's watching you guys going across the country. Like, what the fuck are these guys doing?
Yeah, what are these guys doing? And so we're driving, and like I remember we came across this one checkpoint, and our SDF guy was a little bit ahead of us. And he just blew through it. And when he did that, they like kind of closed the checkpoint. So like I was forced to stop. And it wasn't like I could blow through it. It was like the barricades that would screw this car up. So I like stopped into it. And I just remember it was like that scene out of 13 Hours when they get picked up and like all the guys are pointing AKs at them. Because who are we? We're like 2 white guys with beards and civilian clothes driving this Toyota Land Cruiser. And I can't roll down the windows because it's all Kevlar'd up. And it's just like, we're sitting in there, they're yelling at us to do stuff and we're not complying. And all I remember is like, my buddy had his hands on his M4 and I had my hands on my Glock, and we're just like game planning. We're like, okay, dude, I'm like stepping on the gas a little bit, like revving to get through. And I'm like, okay, we're going to blow through it. I'm going to run over this guy. You're going to start shooting him. And then it's going to be cake, but it's going to be fucking beautiful.
Pop the seal, drop the frag, pull the door, close real tight.
Yeah, and like as it's happening, like, and it's crazy because there's like tension building. And like at this point, they're pointing AKs and like yelling at us and like knocking on the window and everything. And then finally our SDF escort like comes burning in and like, they run out of the car and they're like, yelling, no, like these guys are with us. And they're all like, oh,
they're actually willing to die for their country.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, okay. And like, yeah, they just opened up the checkpoint and let us go. And we spent the entire day. We picked up the guy from across the country and we drove him back. And like, it was just super weird. It was like the weirdest tour of Syria I've ever.
Yeah, that's
like they don't offer that on like the tourist package.
I would definitely put that up at the top of sketch.
Yeah, it was super sketch.
Top of the list.
Yeah.
So
it was fun though. I had a good time.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, man.
Well, talk about tell me a little bit about what you're doing now with your organizations, and of course that came from military. So you spent time in a Ranger regiment.
Yeah.
Got out, went guard. I know you dealt with some stuff in the guard too. I'd love to come back around to.
Yeah.
But talk to me about what you're doing for vets now, because it's a pretty cool concept that I saw you start up.
Okay, yeah. So when about 2020 happened, and obviously we were all sitting at home doing nothing, and everything was super slow. And I'm like, I don't like being static, because being static is a slow death in my opinion. And I've always been
devil's workshop, as they say.
Yeah. I've always been really, passionate about the men. Not passionate about men, but passionate about the men, just got to clarify.
Humans.
Humans. And, I enjoyed being a leader in the military. I enjoyed being a leader in the National Guard. Like, I enjoyed teaching people. I enjoyed that connection, that genuine human connection. And growing up, my mother, one thing she really instilled in her children was like giving back. I remember every Christmas before we could open presents, she'd take us to a low income neighborhood, and we had to give presents to like some of her, she was in construction at the time. So like she had workers that would, that would build for her and demo for her. And they came from low socioeconomic, households. And so obviously Christmas compared to our house versus them, we'd give them presents first and then come back. So that was really good growing up, getting that kind of like.
Good job, Mom.
Yeah, no, it was really good. And, one day hope to instill that in my children, just because it just makes the world a better place. But I've always had a love for fashion. I came from a very artistic household. So my artistic, yeah.
yeah. So what was some of the arts that your family?
So my mother was a fashion designer growing up.
Okay.
And then after we were born, that kind of lifestyle, traveling to London and New York every week and a half, it's not really suitable for when you're bearing children or trying to raise a family. So she stayed at home. My dad was a hairstylist, and he was a German rock star growing up. He like opened for Salt and Pepper and like Naughty by Nature, and when they do like German tours. And he's still a musician and sound engineer today. And then actually before I joined the Army, my sister and myself were like very high level competitive dancers. So that really went over really well when I joined Ranger Regiment, because the second they found out, it was like the worst hazing I've ever gotten in my life.
What style?
Hip hop. Yeah, hip hop and break dancing. Yeah,
hip hop and break.
Yeah, so it was like, it was like you got served every single day in my high school years. It was a different skill. It kept me in shape. And
we're gonna have to get some B-roll of this.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, guys, it made me a riot.
I'm gonna film this and put it in over this section right here. Just
if you're you're growing up, I think every man should be able to dance. Cultures throughout the beginning of time, that's how they've attracted. Animals do it, peacocks.
I'm not gonna argue. You're absolutely right.
The man with the moves is the one that brings the girl home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's.
I suck at dancing.
Dude, you got 2 left feet?
I did. I started taking salsa reggae classes and some other ballroom type stuff because
real classy stuff.
The wife wanted to do it at the time, and I'm like, it's not my thing.
Yeah.
And I was really big into the research studies and stuff at the time, like human movement and mechanics. And so I remember finding a coach that was really good and versed with the sports performance in dancing. Yeah. And I was like, well, maybe I can get something out of this. And then and all of a sudden I started seeing a lot of crossovers into our world. Because if I take somebody like in a marching band that's a good dancer, teach them how to shoot on the move.
Yeah, the flexibility.
What happens?
Yeah.
They're on point.
Magic.
Immediately. So people that do have a dance background or some things like that are so much easier to teach when we start getting into more dynamic stuff and on the range or in shoot houses or whatever. And then they get laughed at. It's like, no. Look at how they move. And there's a reason for the way they move. And I thought that was cool. So
no, yeah, I definitely noticed like a crossover too when I was there because, I was big into like the military culture. My mother was not like a big gun person. My father was from Germany, so guns were never in the household. So like I had to supplement through like airsoft growing up. So I was like huge into airsoft and Milsim. It's funny because like I'd be watching Magpul Dynamics when I was like 16 years old. So shout out to you, good sir.
It's not that old, dude.
Yeah. No, you're not old at all.
I mean, you're only 22, so.
Yeah, 22. Thank you. That means the moisturizer is working, man. Yeah. But, so, growing up.
I'm on the TV and you're playing with the airsoft gun in the living room?
Exactly.
Is that what's happening?
Exactly, in high school. And then it was like, I was competing in dance all over the nation. And then second I graduated high school, I was on a bus leaving for the Army. So the Army was the plan. The dance was just something to do while I, was waiting to leave.
What was the inspiration to join the military?
sense of duty call.
Just sense of duty.
Since I was super young, that's the only thing I can remember ever wanting to do with my life.
Really? Okay.
Like I had zero aspirations of going to college. Like when I was in like the pressure of students to like perform, take the SATs, if that's still a thing, like the STAR testing when I was in school, like people were so stressed out about like, getting into college.
I didn't want into it at all.
Oh yeah. No, I was like, I got a C-. Good enough for the Army,
Yeah.
So like my goal was to join the Army. I was depped in like in the future soldier program when I was 16, like 2 years before I could even leave.
I did the same thing.
Yeah. So that's the only thing I ever saw myself doing was joining the military. And so when I finally left, like I got my high school diploma, and a week later I was in Fort Benning. Like I didn't have my summer. That's all I wanted to do was join and leave. It was just, I'd see on the TV when 9/11 happened, I was so young. It's like, but it's still a core memory of mine. Because all I remember is coming home after it and telling my mom, like, the sky's falling. Yeah, like some young kid stuff, and all the chaos, seeing it, because obviously everybody's talking about it. It was such a big deal. And since that, I don't know about the rest of us, but like when people attack your home or they, your safety is on the line. If you don't do nothing, you're either a coward or you're already dead. So ever since I can remember, that's the one thing I've wanted to do. And I think that's what sprang my interest in airsoft. And like I collected, different pieces of kit. I'd sit there and do, with dry fire with like all my guns and everything. And it actually really translated well when I joined, because I remember going through RASP, they like made us do a stress shoot, and this was like the first time we were actually able to really run guns, because in basic training they give you like the mag and you do the qual and that's it. But the marksmanship week in RASP, I was like kind of getting a taste of what they do in Ranger Regiment, because all those dudes do is shoot. Like when you go to the range, they're like, here's as much ammo as you need, and you work drills, you do everything, like you become a competent shooter. So in that stress shoot, I just remember smoking everybody, and that was like the biggest deal ever. And like all the RASP cadre made me dance afterwards, because it was their like torture for me. But I'm good, I would do like a backflip and they'd leave me alone for like a couple of days and everything. I saw it translate really well. Like I never really trained running. I didn't lift when I was dancing, and like I was crushing, like I was maxing the PT test. It was like the cardiovascular ability to like, basically be in zone 5 for like, joke, man. Yeah, it's like sprinting. Yeah. So it helped out a lot, and it helped me get my fiance today. A little mating dance, man.
I might have to take some. You have to be my personal coach for a little bit. Yeah. All right, so you get out and you start. When did you start Kit God?
Okay, yeah. So Kit God, wow, totally went off track there, huh? But
no, but it's kind of cool the history that leads up to that.
Yeah. Know? Okay. Yeah.
So when I saw Kit God, I think I told you this. I was like, what the hell is he doing? Was Kit? Is he gonna start doing kit reviews or something? Yeah. And I was like, actually, that's nothing to do with kit reviews.
Yeah, not really. It's more to do with like style, because like coming from a dance background, like being exposed into like the hip hop culture side, and like seeing style from my mother, and like growing up, just being in that thing. One thing I noticed in the military is nobody knows how to dress nice. Man, and like no offense to the guys out there,
just don't.
But there is zero
I came
style.
Back from Camp Pendleton. I was out there half a week looking at all the young kids.
Yeah,
walking
blue
by,
jeans
like,
and PT shoes with like it's
trying.
Yeah, they're trying, but like no one knew how to dress, and that was like my thing in the military. Like I'd always look nice. Like I'd always have like the coolest threads on and everything. So when I got out of the military, I was like, what can I do, to make people look nice? That's like it. When you dress nice, like when you put on a military uniform and you're freshly shaven and you're in shape and you got it, when you look good, you feel good. And like, why don't you want to feel like that every single day?
That's a good point.
When you're walking around the street? Yeah, having pride. That was one thing about that I enjoyed when wearing the uniform. Just taking pride in how you dress, like you're a professional. So on the style side,
and that's getting lost in the military.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I get the culture shift, like seeing from the Rangers go from high and tights to like super long hair, and like kind of like the unscruff. Like we want to grow beards. We want to have super long hair.
Boots, no more ironing camis, like none of that stuff.
Yeah. Now it's like the dirtier you look, the cooler you are. Yeah. But I want getting out of the military. Like I wanted to basically start something that, gave gave people an avenue to look good. And I also wanted to help veterans while doing that, because I'm in LA. One of the craziest, shocking statistics I ever found out about when I was going to college, I was taking like a sociology class or something, and they're like 1 in 4 homeless people in LA are homeless veterans. Yeah. And I was like, do you know how many people that is? Like just 1 in 4, 25% of anything is of a group of people is an outstanding amount. So like you just see 4 homeless people, one of them is vet. So I started like going down and driving by the West LA VA campus and just kind of seeing like what programs do we have in place that like is combating this or assisting this or doing any type of rehabilitation to get these people help. And like there's some, but not a whole lot. So I basically started Kit God because I wanted to sell things that make people nice, and then I wanted a revenue stream to be able to put that towards assisting homeless veterans. So when I started Kit God in 2020, it was great. I launched a t-shirt that like now I'm learning the error of my ways, because it was like if you know, you know. It was like a Ranger diamond. It had a little money sign in the middle, and that was basically 275's kind of like unbeknownst logo. I mean, it doesn't come from good origins, but like it's what we're known for. So I sold that. I was selling t-shirts, and I remember I just wanted to do something, so I made enough money to like basically put together about like 50 to 60 hygiene kits with like socks, basically everything you would need in case you lived on the street, just to keep yourself clean, keep yourself healthy. So I made all these kits, and I brought them over to the West LA VA campus, and like they have housing on campus, but obviously there's such an uptick in homeless vets in LA that they were maxed out of capacity, and then all the overflow would just be on the street right outside. There's just one fence separating them from like,
we've had that here.
Yeah, just having running water. So I handed out those things, and I really hope that it helps some people. But one thing I learned during that event was like, everybody thinks everything's so black and white. The homeless issue's not at all, because like comparing it to global warming, they say like, oh, we just stop eating beef once a week and then the methane stops and blah, 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 And it's like, that's like a one solution problem. Like we have one solution. Like if you do this, if you do A, B will happen.
That's the way it is anywhere.
Yeah. So with the homeless issue, you can't do that. It's like, if we do this, well, they're an actual living, breathing, thinking entity. They can choose to accept or not, So when I was handing out those hygiene bags, one of the craziest things happened to me. I met this guy, and I'm like in his tent, and he's got like a plasma screen TV in his tent, and they're like running electricity from the VA. It was the craziest thing ever. And I'm like, oh my God, like this looks like a deployment tent. Like this guy is definitely doing what he learned. And started talking to him, and he turned out to be a Ranger. And like, but not like a fake one, a lot of homeless guys you've seen on the street, like doing the stolen valor, but I questioned him, and he knew all the right answers. That only like somebody that was there did it. And he knew like people that I knew. And I was like, everybody else I was kind of nice with, like, hey, you're hard on your luck. And I was like a little bit more firm with him, because I was like, hey.
Sure, you can be. Yeah.
I was like, hey, like, I know what you're capable. I don't know these guys, but I know if you did that, I know you now. Why the hell are you here? And he just was like, you know what, man? The Army trained me to do this. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. He's like, this is exactly the setup I had in Iraq. He's like, this is easy. He's like, I have a pretty good life. I do everything I want. He's like, I get checks from the VA. I just like hanging out with these people because they're a good time. And, it's not much different from the life that I had before. And I was like, oh, my God.
Wow, what a crazy perspective.
Oh, my God. I was like,
to hear that, I can see it being in
there. Yeah.
No,
and I saw that, and I was just like,
tent,
Yeah, and when I heard that, I just kind of gave him his bag, and I was like, all right, take care of yourself, buddy. And I gave him a Kit God shirt. And I was like, how do you convince somebody that is so comfortable?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
How do you not enable them at the same time to continue to do what the audastic us, right? To say the almighty us, to say that you should live that way. But he's clearly happy.
He's living the dream. He's living the way he's been living for years. Or is it a
delusional,
we don't
separation and reality of his identity?
Mm-hmm.
Psychologically speaking, it could be him thinking that that's the way life should be.
Yeah.
But if he had another opportunity, would he actually be happy or would he not be happy?
Yeah.
That is a weird dynamic, man. And that's one
weird.
story of, now if you interviewed every single one of them, you'd probably get crazy stories like that all over the place.
Yeah. And then the only really feasible thought that I had, because this kept me like awake at night, because I was like, what? Why would he want to do this? Like, he was a ranger. Like, why would he ever want to be here? And the only logical thing I could have is like, okay, like, you could do cool things, but when I was in Syria and you would see the kids like running around and everything, and Syria was a mess when I was there. I was there in 2017, and like, there'd be trash, just things burning all over the place, just like controlled chaos at the max. We lived in squalor. Like, we didn't live in a built-up place. Like, we couldn't drink the water. We had to use the bathroom in bags. Like, we couldn't do anything. If you ate the food they made, you were getting sick. Like, it wasn't like if, it was a matter of when. But you'd see these kids, and the amount of happiness that they would express when you'd give them something so simple as a piece of candy.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, if you don't know any better, why would you want it? Yeah. So that's kind of why I was like, okay, well, I can get it, man. It's like, I can't change his mind, because if he's happy doing what he wants, like, who am I to like be, savior complex and be like, I know what's best for you. Like, that's the most Army thing that I could do to you, and we're not there anymore.
Yeah.
The only thing I could do is pat you on the shoulder and wish you the best.
Well, I think we have this kind of, it's a study I've been trying to look into now for a little while, and exploring more of my own self. It's called a super sense of justice. I think I've mentioned it before a couple times online in some past podcasts, but like, it's a very interesting concept to where we have this sense of justice and everything in our life, whether it's growing up as a kid, I want to serve, right?
Yeah.
I was the same as you. I think I was 9 years old when I had made the commitment to serve my country. And then by 13, I knew exactly what I was going to do, which is what I actually became.
Yeah.
In the military. Not now, of course, but, and you look back and, you have this sense of like, you should always strive for excellence, right? Look at the Rangers and the creeds that we have, and just, and the special operations community, just joining the military in general, not even soft, right? You're trying to uphold a higher standard of care. You're probably the person most likely that drives down the road and sees somebody with a flat tire. You want to help them, and you assess and go, okay, that person clearly needs some physical help. I'm going to pull over. Versus I see two guys sitting there changing the tire. I'm like, you guys can have that. That's your shit. You should be handling that, right? But if somebody needs help, I'll help them. I'll be the first person to help somebody cross the street that needs assistance, or somebody that's handicapped. I'm the first person to go and give a hand. That's not because I'm just an empath in general, and an emotional person. It's also because I have this sense of justice that you should do something when somebody needs help. And if you're not suffering, you better help other people who are. And then we join the military. We go and we fight for and put foot to ass for our country, and we continue to help the kid with the piece of candy, and so when you see somebody that is live that life, we tend to go back and like, why aren't you being excellent?
Yeah.
Because we judge and assume that person isn't living an excellent life.
Yeah.
But then you get whacked in the face with that kind of story. Like, dude, I'm doing exactly what the military taught me to do. To be self-reliant. It's got a good point. How do you argue with that?
Like, at a base minimum, you're like, that is self-reliance to a key, man, to a T.
And I agree, like, there's no one solution to, and then maybe we don't even use the word fix that, but there is I don't call it pandemic, but there's a problem with homeless people in this country. And it's not just that aspect. I think it's also, look at the suicide aspect that we have in today with vets. And I heard some numbers not too long ago that really made me kind of sit back and go, holy shit. Where if you look at how many losses have we had in the last 25 years? Like 9,000, right? Just over 9,000 lives that we've lost in combat operations in 25 plus years. Compare that to Vietnam. Compare that to Korea. Right?
Vietnam was 20 plus year conflict. It's like 50K, 49.
Yeah, so similar with Korea. And then what about World War II? 400,000 plus. So now we look at 9,000. That's pretty damn easy. Wow, we
kicked ass.
We must be really fucking good. And it's like, well, wait a minute. 141,000 people that are GWAT veterans have committed suicide.
Yeah.
So our true number is almost 150,000 people that we've lost in the global war on terrorism, but nobody hears those numbers, right? Yeah. And so, like, the fact that it's that big, I'm curious now, was it that big in Vietnam with Vietnam veterans? Did they commit suicide as much as we're doing today in Korea? I don't know. I'm just throwing that question out there because I think it's interesting to try to answer, because I never heard my grandfather talking about stuff like that. I never heard my dad talking about stuff like that. And now it's like all we talk about, mission 22 lives a day. It's like, well, that's not including the dude that jerked the wheel into a fucking bridge embankment because he wanted to take his life and it just looks like a vehicle accident, right? So the numbers are always bigger than what they actually are, in my opinion. But, you see that I would call it almost catastrophic growth of numbers of suicide and homeless people. Is that a good thing? I would clearly say no. Being homeless on the street when you have the ability to have resources in your life is probably not the best thing for your physiology, and your health. Yeah. Because you're not going to be able to take care of yourself and have the resources, regardless of how much resourcefulness that person has, which is extreme and awesome. And I wish I sometimes could test myself like that and go, like you and I, we should go do that, like a social experiment. Hey, let's go live on the street with these guys and see how it feels a month in. Yeah. Are we going to still want to be there? Exactly. Are we all of a sudden going to go, wow, this is exactly what the military taught us. This is great too. Yeah, screw the rest of life. No, we're not going to do that, right? No. Because we're not taking in the social aspect there as well. We're not taking in what's his life situation. Where's his kids? Where's his wife? Where's his family? Where's his mom and dad and brother, who also are begging him to probably get off the street? Yeah. And I think that's where we come back to that excellence aspect and go, dude, you're better than that. But at the same time, it's an interesting wake-up call to see that from his perspective. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
One thing that stood out too with that conversation was he said specifically, I like these people. And, exiting the military is not an easy task.
Because they all have dark humor and they're all...
Yeah, no, I'm assuming, or the drugs are really good. Who knows? But
probably a bit of both.
Yeah, a little bit of both. But when he's like, I like these people, and then I sat there and I'm like, okay, well, I got out of the military. It's not an easy task. It's because you're leaving some of the best friends you've ever made. You're leaving an excellent community, and I feel like a lot of veterans when they exit, and I experienced this firsthand. You become kind of lost because you're like, well, I don't really have a community anymore, and I've almost been programmed to work in a team. I've been part of a wolf pack. Like, what happens when the wolves leave the pack? Like, they probably
It's like Tyler Gray says. Like last season, he was on the show, and he, he said, you lose your job, you lose your identity, you lose your friends, you lose your purpose, you lose a lot of things. Even though you're not dying, you're out now, but then you kind of go, what do I do now? Yeah. Even though I might have a job. I might have a job opportunity as soon as I get out, which I did. Yeah. But I'm still kind of like, is this really what I should be doing? Yeah. So it's a tough transition regardless. It is tough.
So, I mean, some guy in that scenario who, not necessarily finds a good community, but finds a community nonetheless. Yeah. And he's, experiencing something that he's been trained to do. Like that, I could see in his mind as an ideal scenario where he's like, I'm still cashing checks, partying every night. Got a plasma screen in my tent, Yeah, just don't give them your Netflix password.
Free power from the VA, which isn't really free, but that's the issue that we're,
But I could see
it.
So
are you still offering services in that space? You still trying to help out?
Yeah, so I had to take a little bit of break from Kick God when I was filming this show, just because it was like, when you stretch yourself so thin, it's kind of hard to put, effort, which I'm sure.
What are you talking about? Yeah. I have no idea what you're talking about, man.
I know.
Don't you put that on me, Ricky.
Yeah, right. No, you're doing just fine. But I noticed personally that, when you try to stretch yourself so thin, it's kind of like, how do you fill up a glass the quickest? If you have 4 glasses in front of you, what's the fastest way to fill up one? It's like not pouring a little into one. It's like, boom, beaming one and then moving on to the next. So I was doing a little bit at a time, every single glass. So when the show came out,
find more glasses.
Yeah, more glasses. That could always be. Yeah. Oh man, I didn't try that, so maybe I should try that next time. But I took a little back
to fill up.
Yeah. But now that the show's filmed and it's coming out, I've kind of put my eggs back into Kick God because it's something I believe in. First of all, we all should look good. I love a place. When everybody looks good, everyone feels good.
I'm going to buy this stuff. I'm going to see if it works.
Yeah. You'll feel good. Trust me. But I also think, I'm not really focused on building my own things. There's so much stuff out here. Look, like I'm showing up to the party late. Like there's everything I could possibly think of in my mind that's cool has probably already been invented. So I want to make at least this is the vision moving forward, is to create almost a marketplace that's a one-stop shop for, like, it's almost a Nordstrom for tactical equipment that you could wear on the street.
Okay.
Like, how many people have you seen in like the hip hop space wearing like chest rigs to like courtside? A lot. Like I've seen guys like Travis Scott, Drake, Post Malone wearing, Gore-Tex, multicam, all these things. It's becoming a style, and it's getting some attention in the fashion industry, and I think that's super cool because I'm, being in the military, I've always started leaning towards more function than fashion. It's like, okay, well, why do you wear a fanny pack now? Because it's functional as hell, and it's like,
I've always worn a fanny pack.
Always. It's a power move. Yeah. Putting stuff in your pockets is overrated. But it's like, okay, well, it's functional, and can I take this and make it, look super cool? So I want to basically create, and there's so many people that make cool stuff. It's like, why can't I celebrate everybody's achievements in one spot while, so supporting each other, supporting the community, and then helping another one with the proceeds. So that's the goal now moving forward.
Did you graffiti that yourself? Was that your artwork in that video I saw?
Oh, hell no. No.
That's not, I thought I was like, damn, dude,
I started drawing though.
Now? Okay.
Yeah, so that's homeboy. His tag name is Scholar.
Because I've tried. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
That is hard as hell.
Like when I saw him do that, like I had a Ranger buddy actually hook me up with that guy. This Ranger buddy, I'll name him unnamed because he likes to be unnamed. But he like helped me track down this guy out of LA, and he's like a faceless tagger. So he's like the guys that'll go up, and they're called run-ups. So like if you're ever walking down the street or like driving down the highway and you see like tags in the craziest spots, like how the hell do people get up there? Those are called run-ups. So like it's a sport to them.
To see if they can put it in the hardest places.
Yeah. That's meant. It's like, and all those tags are people's names. So that's like their.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not just doing gibberish. Like it actually means something.
Cool.
It's the artist. So like that's kind of a competition for graffiti artists. But I got connected with this guy, and he like was like, just don't put my face in it, because obviously, I'm breaking the law like a lot of the time. But there's a cool place in Venice that lets you do it. It's like it commemorizes like graffiti, because I see it as art. Like that takes skill.
It's hard. I've tried it. And I've had some artists that have shown me some really good graffiti guys, and they're just like, I can't get it down. I'm a pretty good artist. I draw everything and conceptualize a lot of the products and designs and storyboards here. But that's just a different world, man.
It is. But that like totally inspired me to learn a new skill. So like, I bought myself an iPad after there, and I've been like doodling, and now all my designs that I've done, like all the graffiti moving now has been mine. Cause I was like, well, it's cool. If you can't do something, you put your ego to the side and hire somebody that can.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's no point in trying to, juggle everything. You're just going to stretch yourself thin.
Yeah. I mean, to an entrepreneurial start, there's a certain point but once you can't handle it anymore and you need to open up some free space, you got to bring somebody in that you can trust.
Absolutely. But it does help to understand what's going on. So like give yourself a little bit of exposure, like kind of like jack of all trades, right? Master of none, oftentimes better than a master of one.
We don't say that in the recon community.
Oh, you don't say that?
You can't half-ass jumping out of an airplane, diving, sniping, and doing everything. You got to be masters at all of it.
Okay. No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Challenge me.
I'm not challenging you. I get it.
No, it's No, I think I've grown up on that jack of all trades concept, and it's like you have to be good at a lot of things.
Yeah.
You can't master everything. That's why you have teammates. That's why you have to have. But it's good to master the basic foundations of things, and then bring in subject matter experts. Like I got to know accounting, right? Do I like it? Absolutely not, right? So I'm going to bring in somebody that I trust and that really knows it way better than I do, although I have to have a little bit of knowledge there. So, as one example. Speaking of breaking shit and illegal stuff.
Great. That was...
No, go back to like when you were in the Guard out in LA during the riots, man. I'm curious about that because you had a first kind of a front row seat to a lot of the stuff that was going on in LA. And kind of like, because I know you went and saw the movie Civil War recently, so I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I saw it, and we'll dive in deeper here in a minute on that. But like, I was like, fuck that movie, that was garbage, And I think a lot of people have that perception. But then I started thinking about it, and I started having some good conversations with friends and family, and I'm like, wait a minute, Holy shit. So let's start back with your experience
Sure.
in LA, what that was like there.
Yeah.
We had our own little experiences here and stuff, but like you were in the Guard, you were at Ground Zero-ish.
Yeah. So, I mean, even though this was like a national level event, like
Right.
obviously the George Floyd incident, I call it, but it created a nationwide havoc, and a lot of bad things happened. So yeah, I got activated. I remember getting the call. I was actually drinking beers with my buddies, and like I got a call, and I was like, "Crap, I gotta go into work right now." Ended up going a little later, but I got there eventually. Yeah, we got the call that like LA was pretty much on fire, and I think it happened a little too late because like we saw the devastation like coming into it. Like there was businesses that were just completely marauded. The streets were way dirtier than I've ever seen them before. It was just absolute chaos on the streets. And we spent 10 days doing like 12 on, sometimes 16 on, 12 off, and just seeing these angry people. That was one of the craziest things I've ever done. First of all, I was more sketched out being on the streets of LA at nighttime than I was in Syria. That was terrifying.
Why is that? Explain that.
Well, there was different aspects of it, just because the last thing I personally wanted to do was have to get in a tick with a fellow American. That it was like either me or you, buddy.
That's right.
Yeah, that was, first of all, that was the last thing I wanted.
Yeah,
Second of all,
we don't know how to fight that fight.
Yeah. No,
we know how to go overseas and fight, but
exactly,
that's different.
And that's another thing with the units that I worked with on the Netflix show. Like, going into Colombia, they're like, we don't deploy. Going to Mexico, they're like, we don't deploy anywhere. It's like our war's here, and they had a lot, and that reflected in their ROE. Like they had, for example, side quest here, but Mexico, when we were with them, they had the most strict ROE I've ever seen. ROE, for those listeners, rules of engagement, right? They're like, even if the guy has a gun, in our world, he's dead. Just because you pick that up, you're going to play. In Mexico, even if the guy had a gun, you weren't allowed to shoot him until he is at presentation. Yeah, at presentation, of basically about to fire. So like that split second, definitely takes takes some self-control.
They have more casualties too down there.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those reasons, because the one thing that the major explained to me when he was explaining the concept, because coming from guys that go overseas and we're like, dude, if you even put one finger on that gun, I'm gonna pump you full of lead. It was, for them, it was like, a lot of these cartels, they force these people to do this. They don't want to be here, so
that's a good point.
Yeah. He's like, why do we want to kill innocent people? Like, just because they're holding a gun doesn't necessarily make them guilty. It's like it's either they want to get killed by us or killed by them. It's like their choice. So that was very interesting. But yeah, the last thing I wanted to do on the streets of LA was, be in conflict with my countrymen. Second, crackheads are so scary in LA. Yeah, we'd be sleeping in our Humvees and just have some dude tweaking out, like pop up, and like, like terrorists are scary, but zombies are way scarier.
Right.
Like, yeah. So that was also
just totally schizoed out.
And, that's like another level,
a different dimension.
Yeah, I had one homeless person like try to hit one of my guys with like a chair. He was like on a complete rampage and like picking up chairs and like literally swinging it at my guy, and like we had to de-escalate that. Like, I mean, a lot of the transient population, we talked about the crisis, but like it is out of hand. I don't know how to, we were being utilized to assist the police. So there was a big delineation between the National Guard and the police. Everybody thought we were working together and like we're one unit, but like it was very few and far in between. So like the police had their primary objective and we had our primary. Ours was to not necessarily handle the protesters. Ours was to protect property.
Right.
So like, hey, at least I remember in my mind, this is me personally, but I was like, these guys have absolutely a right to be here. This is what makes America great. Whether I agree with it or not, this is America, baby, please. And I would sling my rifle on my back and I'd hold water bottles in my hand. And as they're screaming at me, I'd be like, hey, buddy, I know you're parched from, screaming all day. Here, take this water. And he'd be like, fuck you. And I'd be like, have a good day. Yep. Because they thought we were the cops and we weren't. We're just like, hey, exercise your rights. But the second you touch this building and try to, trample on somebody's good living, then we're going to get involved. So it was just it was a good experience, but it was also a multi-dimensional thing that I feel like everybody thinks they understand, and I don't even understand it myself. But being there and just feeling those emotions, and having seeing, smelling, tasting everything that was going on around. Well, not tasting, but yeah, I wouldn't eat anything off the street there. But just to have that experience and to see those things and to hear those things and just get like, it was like sensory overload at times, because you're like, what is going on? And speaking of Civil War, like, I asked myself that question watching that movie. I was like, what is going on? I have no idea what's going on. And then it was like light bulb moment. That's the whole point, because that's exactly what it feels like during, like, what I experienced during the riots. I had no idea what was going on. All I know is what I was going to do personally, which was, try my best to keep everybody peaceful, try my best to make sure none of my men get injured, try my best to make sure none of the protesters get injured, and just, just let it be. It'll eventually, historically shows that shit doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
Like it's emotional response to an event, and I get that. And people, tend to react emotionally to a lot of things, and it's human innate nature. But sometimes it's at the cost of other people's livelihood, and that's when it's a problem. So yeah, it was for Civil War though, but
well, I think that's like whether you're watching a movie about it, like that movie, or whether you're watching the news or you're there in person, and you're watching it go down, I used this word earlier, you're repulsed by watching Americans, which I guess, some people wouldn't call them that, but they are still Americans. If you're an American citizen in this country and you decide to break something, burn something, kick a flag, throw it down, whatever, you're still an American because you have the right to do that.
Yeah.
People need to realize that.
Mm-hmm.
And we put foot to ask for a country for people to have the right to have freedom of speech and do whatever the hell they want to a certain point under the rule of law.
Yeah.
Now, when they start breaking the law, that's when we start going, okay, man, this is getting, but you're still an American at the end of the day. I'm not going to shoot you like some terrorists from a foreign country.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, why didn't you just do that? It's like, because they're Americans. And that's what gives us a shitty feeling inside to go, we don't know how to fight this fight. Like, this isn't 300 years ago, man, when they were forced to do that, which is always a possibility. And I think that's what these, shows, movies, news segments you see where people are running through the streets from helicopter footage and burning shit and flipping cars. They're trying to normalize chaos.
Yeah.
Right. And by watching a movie like that, I think the director and the writer did a really good job by, looking back at it now. Because I remember even posting something that night. I was like, don't fucking come watch. This movie was stupid, man. Don't even watch this. There's no message. And then I was like, as soon as I hit send, I sat thinking about it all night long. I'm like, why is this bothering me so bad? Because it did have a message. And the message was, you're not going to know. Like you just said, like you don't know what to do even when you're in the situation. And you had a set of rules and ROEs to go by. Like you had policies, you knew what to do. But then when you're looking at the actual situation around, you're like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like combat to a point.
Yeah.
Chaos is normal. And it's like, we're talking about the sniper scene. If you haven't seen this movie, like there's the two snipers that are shooting at a guy in the news, the press rolls up, which, even that's a thing, and we even talked about this earlier where I'm like, no, they're the protagonist. And you're like, no,
I saw them as the antagonist, but I feel like they switch
they do. That's the balance, right? It's like, if you're seeing it from the press's perspective, you'll realize how senseless this war is. Like when you look at a news cast of like Palestinian kids walking down the street that are bleeding, or there's babies getting drug into hospitals, or there's bombs and craters and like, entire cities being destroyed. When you look at it from the press's perspective or the news, you go, this is senseless. This is bullshit. Why are we doing this? But when you're on the ground, like those snipers, and they come up and say, hey, what are you shooting at? Some guy shooting at us. Well, who is it? Doesn't matter. Like, well, no, what? Well, who is it? It's a guy trying to kill us, and we're trying to kill him, retard. That's what it is. Are you serious right now?
Yeah.
And like, so to that team, that perspective is, this is normal, man.
Yeah.
This is absolutely normal combat where everybody else is freaking around and running around going, oh my God, running around with their heads cut off and on fire. So I think that they're trying to normalize chaos.
Yeah.
And you talked about emotion earlier. I think that's interesting as well, where we are very emotional, repulsed even watching that movie. But what could being repulsed do to you? It could make you want to go fight. Like, how many people I know watch that movie and was like, dude, we need to fight. We need to stop this shit right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, stop what? What are you going to go fight?
Yeah.
Just like January 6th, like, what are you going to go there and actually do? And a lot of people probably burn me right now on the line for even saying that, but I don't give a fuck. You didn't have a message. You didn't have a mission. You didn't have an objective except to go protest, right? And then lives were lost. And it's an absolute atrocity. It's a shame. I get what we're trying to do by going there and speaking up, but like, what was the objective? Again, they're trying to normalize craziness and chaos, and now they're exploiting it through the news, and everybody's bad or everybody's good. So I think that being repulsed can make you stand up and go, yeah, we need to go and fight right now. We need to go charge that hill. But then also, I think
what happens after?
Better idea is use that repulsed nature you have watching that movie Civil War and go, holy shit, this actually might make me think differently about how I think and make me actually want to fight in a good way and actually band together with community. Which is it's been a big theme that we've tried to push in the last 2 years. By being stronger as a community. Community is the only thing that combats division. Yeah. And if anybody argues that, like, there's a bunch of people in our pro 2A, which is becoming a hilarious statement in today's world, because if you're going to say you're pro 2A, the only thing that should come with is a sense of duty. If you're just throwing it out as a catchphrase, I think that's a very, very bad thing to do. Like, even the controversy of this whole movie, right, and in general, is exactly the point. It's showing, look at that. You could watch something and go, screw that. And I even fell into that for a second. So that's why it's interesting going back and talking to people that have been on the ground and seen that and having that perspective. That's the last thing that people that understand what violence really truly is want. They don't want more violence. You don't want more violence. No. I don't want more violence.
The movie made it look so easy. Which that was like one of the most inaccurate things that I could have put there. Like when the Western forces, which were the California and the Texas subsided. Sorry, I can't say that word right now. But pretty much, American fighting American. Like, they made it look so easy. And it's like, it's not that easy at all. And the most ironic thing I think about my experience in Los Angeles during the riots was the ROE, the rules of engagement we had in Los Angeles, was more relaxed than I had in the Middle East. And I remember they handed out the pamphlet, and like there was a rumor going around on, used to be Twitter, now it's X, but used to be a rumor going around that like National Guard don't actually have bullets in their weapon. And I'd see posts like this, and I'd laugh because I had M855A1 in mine. Yeah. Like, everybody in my battalion was loaded up.
So you guys were gassed up.
Oh, yeah, full combat load, ready to go. And the ironic part was, our ROE was, you are allowed to use lethal force to prevent the loss of life, limb, or eyesight for yourself or another person.
That's pretty loose.
That is super loose. Could you imagine?
Compared to overseas ROEs.
That is super loose. Because, that's up to discretion of that individual. If a protester is swinging on a cop with a weapon, that falls within those.
That's legal.
And then what's also terrifying is like, going into kind of the militia side, like I see the National Guard as more of a militia than a military, because like the big difference between active duty and National Guard is the emphasis on training and the time spent doing so. Because you have like, your primary role in the active duty army is soldier first, and then whatever you do after in your own time is your own time. In the National Guard, your primary role is, working at AT&T, being a student, whatever you have, being a cop on the side. And then your secondary role is a soldier.
It's being a soldier.
And then you look at militias, they meet up once a month and, shoot and train and, walk in the woods a little bit. And that's literally the National Guard. So now you have these guys that are literally have ROE, have bullets, and are faced with the decisions, that could potentially be fatal
which is probably safer than active duty.
Yeah,
because we do have that primary job first in society and private sector, and then we, because I played a little bit in the reserves, and that was a hard transition for me to try to switch those two mindsets from being active duty every single day, Marine to then trying to be the weekend guy.
Yeah,
but I think that gives more I think it provides more reserve, more decision making, more judgmental,
more humanity.
Like, so if you have that ROE, you're gonna be like, I'm gonna be smart about this. Where active duty's like, fucking, let's get it on, bro.
I crumpled that shit up and threw it in the trash can. Yeah. And I was like, there's no way. First of all, the worst thing I think you could do in that situation is pull that trigger.
That's right.
Oh yeah, that would, you think that riot's bad. What about the news article that's going to cause the next fire? National Guard open fire.
That now almost becomes into an international incident where U.S. military starts engaging on its own people in the United States of America.
Yeah, I remember I pulled all my guys to the side and I was like, nope, like your weapon is slung. You're not touching it because, we're preventing something from happening here. We're preventing, minority-owned businesses from being ransacked, and we're preventing a national crisis right now. So just hand out water bottles. I was like, kill them with a smile, man. I was like, they're going to yell at you. They're going to spit at you. I was called every name in the book, and I just smile at them, put my hands in my pockets, and just be like, have a good day.
That's the hard balance. It's like, how dare they say that to us? Trying to protect and serve this country. But at the same time, that's what you're doing you're giving them the ability to be free.
Yeah.
Right? You're not providing freedom. They're showing their actual freedom by doing whatever they please, right? Where in the military, we give up our right to be free. We give up our right to bear arms. We give up our right to go in anywhere we please, right? You give up your right to freedom of speech in the U.S. military. We give up a lot of rights as U.S. military veterans, and that's the reason, I think, to me, is so people can live free.
Yeah.
I've always said it. My grandfather taught me, it's like, it's not from us storming beaches, son. That reason why you have freedom. It's from Americans living free and acting free every single day. All we do is go out in the world and try to make sure that stays that way.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely.
So it's hard not to punch that person in the face that's spitting on you. And it's like, dude, you need to get to reality. But at the same time, it's like, I fought for this person to do that. So what's the balance there eventually?
Yeah. You can't have all the good without the bad. Like it's like, just you can't have freedom of speech. The whole point is to say what you could say whatever you want, regardless if it hurts someone's feelings or not. It's they have the right to do that. So the second you're like, well, you can't say that, that's when you're starting to strip people of their rights. So it's like everybody thinks it's going to be like this perfect scenario, but there's evil people out there. There's people that abuse the law. There's people that abuse their rights, and that's one of the implications. You can't have one without the other, and they just have to live together in sync. It's like yin and yang.
Yeah. It's like life. You got to be grateful for all of it. You can't just pick and choose what you can't be grateful for.
Yeah. Everything's out there.
Yeah. You think it's going to happen again?
What, the riots? They have the protests right now with all the students on the campus.
I guess it is happening on the campuses, but
it's interesting. I'm no expert on it. I was just a guy that walked on the streets, but I feel like, one thing I did notice that was there that's kind of like eyebrow raising is like a lot of the people that were in Los Angeles that ended up getting arrested or were throwing crap or starting real big problems weren't even from there.
Weren't from Los Angeles.
Yeah, the amount of IDs we pulled were like Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Washington, coming all the way from Texas. It's like
which is interesting because the majority of people that destroyed Fashion Square Mall here in the whole Old Town were mostly from California, South Carolina, Philadelphia, New Jersey. That warrants all the way down to Miami, Florida, but not many of them were Arizonans.
Yeah, it's like, this isn't your community. Why are you here? So that was something
because it's easier to do to somebody else's community versus it is
and then go home and sleep like a baby, right?
Yeah.
That was super interesting. But like, we're seeing that a little bit on the campuses, but then again, I'll be honest, I haven't been following it because I think, compared to the riots, like what happened, it's just something that's gonna happen and then it's gonna go away. And that's it. There's no point in having this giant irrational emotional response to it, because I guarantee in 2 weeks it's going to be old news. We're literally arguing about two countries that have been in war since their existence. Nothing's going to change. They're going to do it again in the future. Yep. It's irrelevant, the emotional response, and we're just going to make ourselves look like assholes doing it, and then we're going to impede on everybody's ability to learn and educate themselves on campus. It is what it is, in my opinion, but, you're not going to find me trying to, stop them, because it's not my fight.
Yeah, it's not. But at what point does it become your fight?
That's where the tricky question happens.
And I'm not asking that specifically to you, but I think that's what everybody's asking is like, well, when the hell do we actually say that enough is enough to this?
Yeah.
Because that's a big thing you'll hear with a lot of people that didn't serve in the military or aren't in law enforcement, I get a lot of these questions like, why aren't you guys stepping up more? Why aren't you saying more? It's like, well, who are we to be able to do that at this point in time? And well, why aren't you fighting? My biggest question back is, fight who?
Yeah, there's really no
what kind of American are you?
Are you, right?
That's a big question.
That is a huge question. Yeah, that
how do you
question,
answer that?
That's yeah. I don't know.
Right, we don't know. It's a new question that's just been asked
thing
in Hollywood, right? But to answer that on the spot, every answer is going to be wrong in that point in time. And that's what they're trying to show is like, no matter what you say, nobody's going to agree. And that's going to be the new normal.
Yeah.
So
it's chaos. Yeah. It's crazy. Cause when I was traveling around for the show, like when I'd go and see and experience a different culture, how many places I went where I'd see like such a diverse population? Barely anywhere. Yeah. The US, maybe Canada, the UK. Those are the places that you're going to see, like, you know, everyone from everywhere living together. Everywhere else I went, it was like one culture. So like, we are a melting pot, so I can understand where all the problems come from. But I'm a firm believer of like shedding all our differences and becoming one community. Like at the end of the day, we all are American.
Have to.
Yeah, we all are American. We're under one flag.
And we've done that before.
Yeah.
Regardless of still, you know, racial tensions and shit that's always been around. That's why I want people that are stuck in that rut of racism, because you're not born racist, you learn racism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
it's your community.
travel abroad. Go see other places, other cultures that don't have that issue. And we might start to realize the biggest way to solve a problem is maybe realize there isn't one in the first place.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, that's a really good way to put that. Yeah, I never saw that problem when I was traveling. Never.
Yeah.
And it was more like, you know, being different, you know, traveling to like Middle Eastern country, being covered in tattoos is like, you know, I was treated normally. I was treated like pretty nice guy, you know. Everybody accepted me into their homes with open arms. Like all these cultures were super awesome. There was never one culture that was like, this is kind of weird. It's like when you have that mindset of like being open and ready to experience this, like you're just going to reap the benefits of it. Because there's so much out there that is, you know, that is so positive and really fun. And we have it in the United States, like everywhere.
Yeah.
So that
you probably feel more comfortable walking around other foreign countries and different cultures than you do in your own country nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, that's starting to become a thing.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a big, that's a big problem in my mind, but
yeah. Well, what's next for you?
Next for me, good question, man. I'm kind of just going with the flow, but no, right now I'm focusing on Kick God. I really want to start a campaign where we start kind of raising funds to start dressing or preparing homeless veterans, because like when you have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And like this is basically a tangible scale of how people are motivated to accomplish a specific task or to just be better. And at the base of that pyramid is security, right? Or I'm sorry, the base of that pyramid is survival, right? What do you need? Your basic necessities to survive. You need food, water, shelter, right? And then on top of that pyramid, you have security. And to me, like shelter is definitely in there as well. It's like when do you feel most safe during the day? It's probably when you go home, right? When you go to your house, you lock the door. I would argue that that's a pretty safe thing. Your cave is like your castle is your kingdom. So then you have security, and then on top of that, then you start getting into the more like community side, and then you have the spiritual enlightenment on top of that. So, but to get those bottom things, you need some sort of income, which is going to come with having a job. So if I can basically get these guys on the street, start dressing them, because we live in a very judgmental society. Like when you meet someone for the first time, regardless, you're gonna judge them based on how they look, just because that's just innately human, right? That's like it's almost biologically programmed. Like you're level 1. You ever heard the book? There's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, and it basically goes off like quick thinking, slow thinking, right?
Got it right here.
Yeah. So I don't need to explain this to you, but it's essentially like biologically, when we do something innately, we are gathering information based off our senses, right? And we are formulating an opinion based off that immediate response, right? So, unfortunately, people judge right off the bat. So if we can get these homeless veterans looking good, looking stylish, getting ready for a job interview, get them in the door, that's the goal. So I'm going to start a campaign, basically start raising money to get these guys looking good, get them looking professional like they used to be, and getting them employed. So that's next. Then also seeing how the show performs. Really looking forward to that. Like I said, it's my dream. I've been literally doing my dream at 28, and a lot of people can't say that. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity, and not to mention I'm learning really good skills, like skills that I never, like water. I'm learning how to do a lot of things in the water when I told myself like it's not for me, but here we are. So that's looking like what's next, and then seeing where life takes me. I mean, I'm kind of going with the flow, and then life's good. I can't complain.
When do you fly out? Tomorrow afternoon?
No, I fly back on Sunday. Yeah, Sunday. Oh, I'm driving. Yeah, I like driving.
So you should meet me at the pool at 1:00.
Oh, you want to do
Saturday?
You want to do deep end?
I'm gonna take you to deep end, man.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
Want to do it?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, I'm down.
We'll put some B-roll from that over the top of this.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm down.
I'll introduce you to the crew. That'll be fun.
Okay, cool. Let's do it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, dude, best of luck, man, with Kit God and the next season. I can't wait to be on it. I'm really excited about the opportunity. So thanks.
Dude, I'm so excited to have you and travel around with you, Travis. I do snore, and Ryan sleeps in the nude, so you have to get used to that.
We might be going to prison somewhere.
Yeah,
just letting you know
most likely. Probably.
No, I'm just kidding. That would never happen. But no, hey man, thanks for coming on, bro. It's always good working with you, and looking forward to the future, what you're doing.
Thanks, Travis. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, and it was a blast. Yeah.
Thanks, brother.